This is the valve to the Midmark M9 M11, the newer style machines. It contains a valve for filling the chamber and a valve for venting the steam out of the chamber. It is AC driven by a coil that pulls a piston off of a seat and allows the flow of fluid into or out of the valve. We have a demonstration on the disassembly of that valve, so we're going to go through it, give you an idea of this being the most complicated part of the machine, what it takes to actually make this happen.
I'm now going to demonstrate the disassembly of the main valve block on the Midmark M9 M11 Tabletop sterilizer. In order to do this job, we're going to need a series of tools. A 1/2-inch box end wrench, a 3/4-inch box end wrench, a Phillips screwdriver, and a spanner nut wrench such as the RPT 501. To begin the process, we've removed the side panel of the machine so that we can gain access to the valve block. We've drained the water out of the reservoir, and I've removed the electricity for safety's sake. To begin the process, we're going to remove the wires from both of the valves, the vent and the fill side. Getting them out of our way. I'm going to use the 1/2-inch box end wrench to remove the copper fitting at the top of the vent side of the valve assembly. Once it's been loosened, you should be able to remove it with your hands. We're going to move the copper tubing out of our way. Then we're going to use a 3/4-inch box end wrench to remove the adapter on the vent valve. Once that's loosened, we should also be able to remove that with our fingers. And we'll set it aside. I'm also going to use the 3/4-inch wrench to remove the nuts from the top of both the vent valve and the fill valve. I can set that aside as well, as once we get these nuts out of the way, we're finished with it. Then I'm going to remove the metal housings from both of the valves, followed by the coils from both of the valves. Now we need to take the stems out of the valves. In order to do that, we're going to use the RPT 501. I'm going to stick it behind this piece of tubing, over the valve stem, and we're going to use a screwdriver as a breaker bar to loosen the valve stem up. Once that's been loosened, you should be able to turn it by hand. And we can remove the top part of the valve, the piston, spring, and an O-ring which is right there still attached to the stem. Then we're going to use the RPT 501 to remove the stem on the vent side. Again, we're going to use the screwdriver as a breaker bar. Once the stem is released, we should be able to turn this by hand. And again, we're removing the top part of the valve, a spring, piston, and an O-ring. There it is.
What I was trying to show you at this point is the sealing surfaces of these pistons. On the left-hand side valve, that's the fill valve. It is a normally closed valve, and the sealing surface is the bottom of the piston. This spring presses that piston down, and until we actually activate the coil, that valve stays closed. Once we activate the coil, you allow water to flow from the reservoir into the chamber. The other, well, here we're pointing towards the sealing surface. On the other piston, we have a sealing surface that is actually at the top of the piston, and it's that little red spot right here. It seals against an opening in the top of the bonnet, and because the spring presses down on this piston, this would be considered a normally open valve. The machine will vent any air inside the chamber through this normally open valve until we actually engage the coil, pulling this piston up and sealing it inside here.